2, 1. And we are live. Here we go on episode. Nah, I'm just kidding, Coach Jay. We don't actually keep track of the episodes, and we don't even have really a title for this live stream. But just to introduce for everyone that is probably been waiting for us on a few minutes, we usually start at 3. People don't start rolling in until 3:08, 3:09. But everybody, this is Coach Jon Way of Bartlett High School to give a little bit of an introduction. Well, actually, why don't you go ahead and Jay Way and just introduce yourself. If for all of you, if I call him Jay Way, that's kind of his nickname that almost everyone has for him. But why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, Coach?
Yeah, thanks, Raf. So, like you said, my name is Jon Way, varsity baseball coach at Bartlett High School. This will be my 9th season as the varsity baseball coach. Coached with Raf a few years back, helping out with one of our old coaches, Chip Plant, and that's pretty much how we've grown into the coaching field together. And now we get to coach against each other. So that's been fun. And he reached out, and I'm real excited to be part of this interview and Twitch process.
Thanks, Jay. Yeah, that was actually something I was going to mention too. We're disciples of Coach Chip's Plants. Just to add a little more to it, you went to Bartlett High School, right?
I did. I graduated in 2004.
Yeah, so you're an alumni going back in and running the show over there. That's awesome. Before we just start talking about the actual main topic that we have for the discussion today, which is just talking about the coronavirus impact on the spring sports season here for the MIAA in the baseball season. But before we kind of just get into that, you're also an alternate education teacher at Millbury High School. Is that right?
Yeah, this is my first year doing that. So I was a teacher in Webster Public Schools between the middle school and the high school for 9 years.
Math, right?
And then math, yep.
Yeah.
And then this year I moved over to Millbury and took over the high school's alternative education program and really enjoying my time and what I'm doing there, working with those kids. So it's been great.
One thing that I've been filling in with, which by the way, Jayway, like a lot of the people that like I suggest to come on this, like obviously my students at Leicester High School, but it's really anybody. When it's on the Twitch app or posted on YouTube, anyone can really kind of watch. And there's even like a chat stream here that I'm just keeping an eye on for other comments. But one of the things I've been telling our listeners is kind of like Leicester status on how we've been handling either the remote learning or the enrichment activities with all this. Without going into too much detail with your position, because obviously, you can't be doing that too much. It's not like I'm doing that either. But how's Millbury handling all of this?
So it's a learning process in real time. So we now have a fixed schedule where kids can log on and have live classes with their teachers on certain days, certain classes meet. And then it's really just being able to reach out and communicate with the kids, addressing any issues that they're having learning, because we're all in this together. It's the first time anyone's ever had to do this. So, we're learning as teachers right along with the kids on how to best support them and make sure that we can actually move forward with education the best that we possibly can. So.
Yeah, as only a third year PE teacher at high school, I didn't need a global pandemic to, keep learning along with this job anyway. But yeah, it just adds a whole nother curve to it. And this is actually the second Leicester Millbury encounter. I guess the first Leicester Millbury Bartlett encounter. I guess the assistant principal at Leicester is boys with your athletic director at Millbury. So there's already been a little bit of collaboration going on, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know if you knew that. What's his name? Mara?
Yeah, Pat Mara.
Pat Mara. Yeah, I guess him and Mr. Zawada were boys. Mr. Zawada used to be the AD.
Yeah, those guys are real close. When I went to get my coaching certification, I actually took it, and those two were my instructors. So those guys like to clown around and have a good time, but they're really good at what they do.
Yeah, they are, absolutely. So, all right, this sounds like a good part. Since we're talking about ADs, we can start getting into just the athletic portion for our topic. So to fill everyone in, we all know this is repeated for a whole bunch of times. Spring sports doesn't start till May 4th, which is the same day that we're getting back to school, hopefully, personally, I'm a little optimistic. I know you are too with it, but I know some others that are out there. But let's ask Bartlett baseball, and I'll give you the same over on my camp. How are you guys handling it? Have you kept in touch with any of your players or anything like that?
So I've been in constant contact with my athletic director, just following up because I want to make sure that whatever I'm doing on my end as a coach isn't overstepping the boundaries, because this is really the first time we've ever had to deal with a quote unquote off season this far into the spring season. So I had to make sure that any meetings that I'm holding or I will be holding aren't violating any of the MIAA coaching rules. Um, so what we'll be doing is I'm still optimistic that we're going back to school, right? And I don't I don't have any of the hard facts. That's not my job to make that decision, but I'm going to be optimistic as much as I can be that we will be going back and that we will be having a season. So, there's a lot of obstacles with that. If the first day back is May 4th and that's our first practice, there's a lot that has to happen between now and then in order to hit the ground running and be successful. So we'll start holding virtual meetings where we can get into things that we don't necessarily have to be on the baseball field to do. So we can do chalk talk. We can talk about bunt defense. We can talk about just what we're going to do defensively for cutoffs, our base running plan, anything that we don't have to physically be on the field to do, we'll start doing through virtual meetings. So I don't know if that's something that you guys are doing over in Leicester, but
If you look out your window right now, Coach, it's actually snowing. So yeah, we could definitely do a virtual infield outfield since we can't do it outside.
crazy. I
Yeah.
know this would have been my first year in 10 years that I would have been able to hold a tryout outside. Um, but it is what it is.
We had the same conversation March 9th when we were having our spring athletic meeting. Like, this is the warmest winter, then a week later, everything changes. So, to echo just what you said about using technology so far into this off season that should have ended 3 weeks ago or something like that, we're kind of doing stuff a little bit similar just to keep in contact. And it's actually a little over a week since I've reached out to the Leicester ball players, and I can only imagine how difficult it is just to stay motivated during this time. We're literally another month for everything to go perfect right now at this point.
Right.
You know, but you know what? Let's take a step ahead for a second. Let's say everything is perfect, and given the situation now, it's May 4th. We're back in class, and we can go to practice and everything like that. I mean, have you put into consideration on how you're going to be approaching this season? I mean, it has to have changed for everybody at this point. From looking at 18 to 20 something games, now we may be looking at 12 at most with this modified season in this new MIA format.
Right. I mean, so as much as you want to keep it consistent for the kids that have been part of your program, they're coming in, they know what to expect. Certain things are going to have to change when, like you had said, you're not playing 18 to 20 games, you're playing 8 to 12. So your practice before your first game has been cut down to 7 days now. So we go back May 4th, and theoretically your first game is that following Monday. So it's making sure your kids are doing what they need to do right now in order to get their arms in shape, in order to swing if they can on their own. But, that also brings in some issues with the social distancing that is happening right now. Is we've got to encourage these kids to get outside and be active and continue to throw, continue to swing, continue to pitch. But that can only be done if somebody in their household, somebody that they're living with, um, is able to go out and throw with them, is able to toss some BP,
Yeah.
is able to throw long toss. Because as much as you want these kids out there throwing with each other, you can't encourage that when they're handling the same baseball. So you can't have 2, 3 guys out there, even if they're 90 feet apart, 120 feet apart throwing, they're still handling that same baseball. So that's another thing that you got to consider.
One of the things that I've echoed a whole bunch of times, I'm practically a broken record player just on this live streaming thing, that just putting baseball aside, it can have all to do with baseball or not to do with baseball at all, but it takes the meaning, taking the initiative to a whole nother different thing, because we as coaches have no control over it. The players in some certain part have no control over it, and it's really just taking the initiative to prepare themselves and how difficult it is to stay motivated. And you make one point too, just you're all of a sudden becoming extremely resourceful for the things that you kind of don't have access to anymore, type of thing. I mean, I've seen it on social media all the time. The amount of baseball drills, there's tons of baseball drills anyway that you and I know of. But like that, if that was a stock, man, that can make some pretty good money right now because the number of drills out there that I've made up are just completely skyrocketed at this point. And it kind of just breaks out a whole point of being resourceful and taking the initiative, which
Right.
so and then okay, yeah, to add to you real quick without me talking too much now, but we have a week from when we had 2 weeks before to get ready for our first game. Now it's literally a week on how much are you really going to jam cram in there to get everyone ready for the organizational aspect of this game.
So, the one added benefit that I have is that I'm rolling into my ninth season. So the sophomores, juniors, and seniors that I'll have part of the varsity program have been playing for me since some of them since they were in seventh grade when we were a junior, senior high school. So the expectation, the process, the routine, those guys know. So I'm not
Good.
losing time there. And if we utilize the virtual practices, the virtual meetings effectively, and we're able to go over signs, go over the new rules that these kids haven't even had an opportunity to digest yet. Our base running, um, all of those things that you do during the first couple of weeks of the season while you're practicing and chalk talk, you can save all that time right now if you have the kids invested in virtual practices so that you can hit the ground running and get your physical things done, start getting in shape, start, long toss for those guys that aren't able to throw long toss right now, so that you can be ready to play 7 days after we walk back into school.
How about that for some?
I don't know about you. What's your plan coming back day one?
So, all right, okay. So what we've done so far is, yeah, we've been talking virtually, and it hasn't been so much about organizational stuff. Right now, I just want to, I did it just to reach out and to make sure, um, just to make sure our heads are screwed on well, and the kids just aren't being too confused or have whatever questions that they have. I'm basically using it as a part of just being there for them and just talking about it, anything. What we've talked about so far is just some mental game aspects. One of the books that I mentioned to you that we talked about, Heads Up Baseball by Ken Revisa, that's something that we've done 2 years on, and whatever system that is in place now, they are pretty familiar with it now. 9 years would obviously make a difference with 3 years. So to answer your question, like, not much about chalk talk or anything like that, uh, because in all honesty, with this shortened season and the fact that we have the federation rules that were going to be implemented and the X number of kids that were seniors this year and the X number of kids that were having prospect and opportunities of playing at the varsity level, um, I just haven't done any of that type of talking yet, just because I thought it'd be just making a move to make a move. But why don't we just move that on to the next question? I mean, how are your seniors doing? How many seniors do you have on your squad expected?
Yeah, so we've got about 8 seniors, and baseball aside, my heart breaks for those kids. Right?
Me
Is
too. Yeah.
Senior year is something that these kids have been looking forward to for so long. But something as simple as just hanging out with friends in the hallways and seeing each other in class, and it's something that they've worked for high school alone for 4 years to get to this point, and now they're not able to have that experience. They're worried about what's going to happen with prom, what's going to happen with graduation. So,
Mm-hmm.
For your diehard baseball players, this is heartbreaking from the athletic standpoint, but just from those kids who come out to play baseball because they enjoy their time with their friends and they just want to get outside, my heart breaks for them for all the other reasons, baseball aside.
Yeah, there's a competitive aspect, there's a social aspect, And then for just us as coaches, there's a program aspect with it that is so sacrificed. I mean, yeah, the seniors in their last days in high school, and just knowing when their last at bat, or their last games that they'll be playing this game for high school is all at jeopardy. That completely sucks. And I also feel for the juniors and seniors that are having aspirations that can continue playing. That's at risk because there's an NCAA factor with this as well. 1, 2, and 3 is given another year of eligibility. I also I also feel for the freshmen in the program that need a year on JV to get familiar with high school because they haven't played high school ball yet. Now, 3 years of high school ball between 4 years of high school ball is a huge difference. Or those freshmen or sophomores that can compete at the varsity level and need that season at that type of age to get themselves familiar with it. That's all kind of compromised as well. So, as much as the seniors are affected, and they most certainly are, I feel for almost everyone. I mean, we can't relate to this as former players. We've never had a season taken away without us knowing about it. You know what I mean?
Right. I mean, there's no way to relate to it as from their shoes, right? And you're absolutely right. It affects more than the seniors. The saving grace is that those underclassmen are still going to have an opportunity to play high school sports. But you're absolutely right. Especially playing baseball in the Northeast, how much of a detriment are these underclassmen in when they're missing out on 50 at bats, and that's a quarter of the at bats they're going to see, whether it's JV or varsity, in their lifetime. So they're already that far behind.
Boy, that cat just snuck up right on you, huh? You didn't even see it.
Oh yeah,
What's your
he'll be
cat?
back too.
What's his name?
That one's Jameson, and then Griffey's over in the corner sleeping right now.
Do you have two black cats?
No, one black, one orange.
All right, I was gonna say I have two black cats, but they know not to run across the screen. So,
We haven't trained Jameson that well yet.
well, you got way cooler names. So, Jameson and Griffey, that plays no problem.
Oh yeah.
So, so all right, the federation rules for our listeners that don't know what we mean when we say that. Baseball was going to be dealing with pitch counts and other changes in just the procedures and the rules of the game. Players that pitched and would throw an X number of pitches would then be required to take a X number of days off in order to kind of alleviate or stop this other epidemic of arm injuries in young athletes. And there were a few other things that would be implemented for the safety and just for the way that the game would be played. The pitch count thing that's included in the federation rules, I'll just call them federation rules in general. This was actually a really big thing and a big topic that a lot of coaches would be getting ready for and preparing for. I'm not expecting, if we are to have a shortened season, that we're going to go away from the federation rules. But with this federation rules and the possibility that we still may have an MIAA tournament, I mean, the question I'm basically asking you, what's your thoughts? What are you predicting with this kind of current situation that we may be getting into with the federation rules?
So, the learning curve of these rule changes becomes that much more imperative with a shortened season, because if you're only playing 12 games, you've got to win the minimum. You've got to win minimum 6 in order to make the tournament. So each game becomes that much more important, and a lot of it's going to come down to properly managing the pitch count, which for most coaches they haven't had to worry about implementing before. So it's gonna have a huge effect just on the strategy side of when you're going to throw your one, when you're going to throw your two. Are you gonna remove them from the game when it's a 2-1 game in the 5th inning so that they can come back and throw 3 days later against another rival opponent? And I think each coach is going to handle that differently. I'm really curious to see how that plays out.
Yeah, I think you're going to see programs that are going to salvage this year and get after it, and those that are going to play with next year in mind. Given just that situation, that example, 2-1 score in the 5th inning. The next move, can kind of reveal that type of thing. And I'm not saying one is better than the other, but yeah, I think coaches are going to be forced to make a decision where before, yeah, you can kind of change your mind here and there from one day or from one game to the next game on how you want to approach it. But with these short games, all right, yeah, you're going to go for the W's, or do you going to play with next season in mind? I think is got to be
Right.
a little more exposed with this. All right. Well, all right. Just another next question then. So, just sports in general. What challenges do you think are going to be lying ahead for MIAA Spring Sports once this quarantine is over?
Uh, really, it's a tough one to answer, right? It's going to vary from sport to sport, but just the fact that these kids are going to go into competition with the lack of training that they're used to, because as much as you can get out there and work one-on-one, you're missing that team aspect. You're missing the time to bond with your teammates, no matter what sport it is. You're missing the opportunity to get the coaching from the JV or the varsity coach or whoever it is. So it's going to have an effect no matter what sport you're talking about. If it's track, I don't know too many people that have their own shot puts that they can just go down into their yard and start throwing it around.
Yeah.
So each sport's gonna deal with the fact that they haven't had the opportunity to get out onto the field, no matter what it is.
I think we're gonna. I think I'm just gonna get like 10 more student managers and just have my own like promotions crew. So every game at Rochdale Park, we're gonna have a promotion. Like bobblehead night, or we'll do like a Halloween costume game, something like that. Throw out the first pitch. We'll make it like a minor league ballpark feel, since there's only going to be like 8 games, maybe anyway. We might as well just make them fun. We'll get a bunch of hot dog. Um, Remember the hot dog run with the Worcester Tornadoes?
I was just going to say, you're bringing me back to the Worcester Tornadoes
We could
days.
just do that. Just to fill you in, everyone, Coach Jon Way was the clubhouse manager for the Worcester Tornadoes, the independent pro team in Worcester. I was the clubby for a year after that. So, yeah, too bad we didn't keep any of those old mascot uniforms. We could still do a promo or something like that.
No kidding.
But
Good times.
oh yeah, absolutely. Well, these are good and great times too, per se. But it'll only be better if we can get out there. Imagine how much better the game will be just to get out there. Who cares if it's going to be 40 degrees now? The stuff we used to complain about isn't so bad anymore.
No kidding.
Yeah,
Puts it all into perspective.
absolutely. Which I'm sure these kids are all getting anyway. So with this being Good Friday, technically, I think a lot of other teachers may not have actually had anything. Me personally, I still wanted to do something anyway. So thank you so much for coming on, because you know, we kind of just make this message here on the show where learning can kind of show in all sorts of different avenues. At the end of this live stream, if I call it a show, I don't even know what this is called yet, but usually at the end of this, I give the listeners or the people that go back and watch this on the YouTube with a little something to do or a little perspective to go on it. But I'm not going to add that because, well, the stuff that we kind of talked about kind of goes for other ways. What I've done in the past is have the people that are listening just like reach out and kind of either answer a certain question or look a certain person up or anything like that. But with it being Good Friday, we already did a show anyway, so consider this as all light listening for everyone and just an interesting perspective on just the coaches and the players aspect coming in for the spring, and if and when we get back to school, the challenges are still going to be ahead of us, and we still got to be ready for it and whatnot. So, until then, the next time I'll be seeing you, Coach, maybe either at Bartlett where we play you guys, or maybe at a coaches meeting before then.
I'm good with either.
Yeah,
Let's make a coaches meeting happen if they lift the social distancing.
that's a good idea. I like the sound of that for sure. All right. Well, yeah, that's all that we have for today then. But yeah, Jayway, thanks again for coming on. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was a blast. Hope I didn't bore people too much. But it's just, it's a good way to break up the day and get a chance to talk baseball and, reach out to you. So appreciate it.
We'll do it again. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks again, Jay, and you have a good weekend.
Thanks, you too.
See See you later.